Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I'm the lead learner at the South Carolina Education Association Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves CEWL. You can learn more about CEWL at CEWL.us. All of the live streams that we post or that we host are posted on the CEWL website. So just head on over to CEWL.us. We'd love for you to check out all the resources that we're accumulating there. You can also go to that website to request professional learning for free, provided to you by the SCEA. So we come out and I've done sessions all over the state on mindfulness, trauma-informed practices, and so many other things like technology sessions, that kind of thing. So, and we have lots of people on staff that can do those professional learning sessions for you, public schools in South Carolina, for free at no cost to you, to our public schools and districts. Couple of things going on since we last had our last live stream. We had the passage of, from the House anyway, of 6 weeks of paid maternity leave. So hoping that will eventually make its way through and be signed into law. Certainly a step in the right direction. And we don't want to just attack things. We want to applaud things that we feel that the state legislature is doing that is in the best interest of our educators and their students. Also want to remind people about the voucher bill. The voucher bill is still alive as far as I know. It's called S39. You can use your voice against those voucher schemes at the scea.org/S39. And just to kind of put this into perspective, I was thinking about how, I love my public parks, and I don't mind using public transportation, and I love my public library. But if I wanted to buy a book at Barnes & Noble, or I want to decorate my own yard instead of going to a park, or I want to buy my own car instead of taking public transportation, it's not incumbent upon the taxpayers of South Carolina to give me a gift certificate to go do those things. It's my responsibility to pay for my backyard if I want to improve my private residence. It's my responsibility to pay for my own car if I don't want to use public transportation. It's my responsibility to go to the public library if I want books for free, and if I want to buy a book and keep it, or if they don't have the books that I want in the library and I want to go to Barnes & Noble, it's my responsibility to go and pay for those things. Likewise, it only makes sense that you have a public school option, and we have great public schools in South Carolina. But if you don't like them and you want to send your kids to a Christian academy or to any private alt school, it's not up to the taxpayers to fund that for you. You need to fund that for yourself if that's the choice you want to make. So if you agree with that, I hope that you will join us in voicing your concern at the scea.org/S39. Also, kind of related to the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. If you are against censorship, if you are against removing all these books from the library, and you're against these really odd pieces of legislation that would send a chill over our educators' classrooms in terms of what they can talk about in terms of history and the truth of American history, if that concerns you and you are very much in favor of educators being free to speak about the truth and to have the books and resources that are necessary for our students to learn the full history of the United States and to learn about things from a variety of human perspectives, we encourage you to go to the scea.org/pro-truth. So with that in mind, I've known Tamara Cox for a few years. I met her when she was the teacher of the year, and I was working with Sarah. And we had a discussion and thought it would be a really good time for us to bring on some school librarians to discuss some of the intimidation tactics that are being used to silence people and to make educators and particularly school librarians feel fearful about censorship and about our freedom to sort of express ourselves and to support the wide range of books that are in our libraries. So Tamara Cox is the South Carolina Association of School Librarians president. She's a high school librarian. And we're also bringing in Jamie Gregory, who's an upper school librarian and a journalism newspaper teacher, and Michelle Spires, who's the SCASL president-elect and a K-8 school librarian. So without further ado, let's bring in tonight's panel. How are you guys doing tonight? Are you guys on spring break? Are you coming back from spring break, or what's up?
I'm on spring break. That's why the look tonight, the hair.
Nice. And Michelle and Jamie, how about you?
I'm at work.
At work. Okay.
I just came back from spring break, so
Yeah, we just had our spring break last week here in Horry County. I know some districts have it this week, but I want to first of all say thank you for taking your time out of your spring break and out of your week back from spring break to have this conversation tonight. And I'm going to start off with Tamara and just ask you to sort of frame tonight's conversation. Like, what do you want folks to know about tonight, and why are we having this conversation?
So it's actually kind of sad that we even have to talk about this, but we have experienced some things that have been very unusual the last year, 18 months or so. And so we thought it would be helpful to share our experience and give some advice for other people so that hopefully these things will not happen to other teachers and librarians, and also, if it does, kind of how to react. So censorship obviously has been a huge issue. We keep track of when people let us know when they're dealing with censorship. I mean, we don't hear all of it, but we hear a good bit of it. And typically we have less than 10 complaints about books across the state that we're aware of. And in 2022, we had 307. So it's just kind of exploded. So not only have people, and it's typically not parent, less than 10% have been parents. It's been community members, often associated with a partisan group, that have come with lists of books that kind of increase those numbers. But in addition to those book complaints, unfortunately, they have also sometimes been connected with threats and harassment of the librarians and other school staff members. So it's not just oh, I don't like this book. It's I don't like this book, and we're going to call you this, this, and this name. Or we're going to say your name at a school board meeting, or we're going to blast you on social media. So we just thought it might be helpful for other people if we shared kind of our experiences.
Thank you. Are you sensing, and anybody can answer this question, are you sensing that a lot of school librarians right now, is it a general feeling of being intimidated and sort of fearful about backlash and like, oh my gosh, am I going to get in trouble over this particular book? And what are some of the reactions that these librarians are having as a result of that?
Yeah, I mean, anytime somebody complains about a book, it's a stressful situation, because obviously we don't buy books to try to make people angry, but it's unpredictable what would make different people angry, so we can't really worry about that. But part of, I think, the motive behind these threats and these complaints is they want you to be afraid, and they want you to be afraid to purchase books that someone may complain about. And that's something we have to kind of fight internally, is to not let that fear prevent us from buying books that we know, we should include in the library, even if, other certain small groups may disagree. I mean, we're still following our policies, but a lot of these books deal with race and racism. A lot of them are LGBTQ characters, and those need to be included too. So we just have to fight against that fear, that intimidation part of it. Also, I mean, we've had librarians quit, leave the profession because of their experiences, and so that we've been on the critical needs list for over 10 years. So that's certainly something we don't want to see, because we want every school in South Carolina to have a library program that's strong, run by a certified librarian, because we know that helps the kids. And so, that's a sad part of what is happening, is it's maybe discouraging people from considering being a librarian or even being in the education profession at all. But we have tried our best as an organization to support each other through that, and use our membership and our organization to speak out in order to protect the individuals who may be afraid to speak out themselves.
And I would just kind of want to add to that too, is that even if you are not necessarily being intimidated or no one is like, I have been lucky that I have not dealt with those things through my district or through my community or anything like that. That doesn't mean that at some point I won't, but I think that one thing that happens across the state and really across the nation is that then you fear what if, and so then you are more likely to self-censor in your library because you don't want to face any of that. Because what if this does happen? I live in a small community where everybody knows who you are, and my family, and and I have children and grandchildren, and so you don't want that to be, you become fearful going to be something because now I'm going to be put in the limelight. And that was one of the things, even President-elect for CEWL, we are having to speak out about things to kind of in this where people are like looking and maybe they do have opinions about me, and that's fine. But I think with libraries in their personal, librarians in their personal schools, they're looking at, all right, am I going to self-censor because what if this goes before my board? What if somebody says something about this or blast it all over Facebook, because that's where we go to air all of our community problems that we have with people, or because that's easy to do. So
and these ad hominem attacks that are online, that are it's like, and then you don't know whether to get involved with it and defend yourself or just leave it alone, because you don't want to give it more air, but then the charge is out there. We hear words like groomers and all kinds of like horrible charges against educators across the state, and they're just, this is such hyperbole and such nonsense. But it's like, I feel like what happens is that gets out into the space, and then if we're not defending against it and pushing back against it, then that's the narrative that's heard.
Yeah.
Jamie, what are you seeing?
I think there's a lot of self-censorship. We also call it soft censorship, where Tamara and Michelle already said people try to avoid the issue by simply not buying what they think are the quote unquote controversial books. Books aren't actually controversial. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that they've already talked about is there is no rhyme or reason sometimes to what they might object to. Other times there are some obvious patterns. But what we also try to point out is that every public school librarian in South Carolina is required to be a certified teacher. And we have a master's degree in library and information science. So we are trained professionals. This is not a hobby. This is not just something we love to do on the side. We are trained professionals. And something that frustrates me is when we say that and people come back at us and say, well, you're just being elitist. Oh, look, you have a fancy master's degree. That doesn't mean you know what to tell my kid what to read, which, of course, we all resent that. I mean, in this country, anyone can go. If you want to go get the master's in library science, you go for it. That's what all three of us did. And we're not telling any child what to read. We're not forcing any child to read anything. It's about having options available, and us learning how to select materials, not using our own personal opinions about topics in the books. Exactly.
That's well said. I think it's important, related to what you just said, for us to discuss, and I don't think the public really understands how you go about selecting the books that are in your library. And I think it might be like a brief summary of how a book gets selected to be placed in the library, and sort of what are the procedures and protocols in place to ensure A, that it doesn't cross a line, and B, that it also provides that the library provides a wide range of political views or religious views, people, different genders and backgrounds and racial backgrounds. And so what are sort of some of the procedures for approving a book that goes into a typical public library here in South Carolina?
Okay, so we'll do a really quick summary of something that we learned. We take months and months to learn in our graduate programs. But I mean, we look at the standards that our grades address, whatever level we're at. We also, but included in that is recreational reading. So, that broadens, it doesn't have to be, have to address the standard. It can just be something that we want kids to read for fun. We take recommendations from teachers, students, the community, whoever comes to me and asks for a book, as long as it fits the criteria, I usually order it. But we do have like purchasing policies. So every district has their purchasing policy that lists what is required of a book before it can be considered for purchase. And usually it's things like, must have positive professional reviews, address a standard or recreational reading, etc. So a major piece of what we look at is professional book reviews. So sadly, we don't have time to read all of the thousands of books that we read every year. I would love to, if that were physically possible, but we can't, and we don't look at every single page. So we look at these professional reviews, and those professional reviews are from places like Booklist, Publishers Weekly, School Library Journal, etc. It's not Amazon. It's not Goodreads. It's not partisan pages of websites that list how many bad words a book has. We look at professional reviews that'll have a summary of the book, some sort of like statement about the quality, the literary quality of the book, and then recommended age or grade level ranges. So we really look at those professional recommendations, as we're creating our book orders. But then we audit our collections and say, I need more dinosaur books, or some kids have asked for books about coding. We carefully look at those. We weed out the old stuff. It's an ongoing process. It's time consuming. It's thoughtful. Yeah. Go ahead, Michelle.
I'll say that I would be willing to bet almost all districts in South Carolina have a selection policy. I was just pulling mine. So I have mine so that when I am making orders, I can look and see, all right, what is my selection policy? And so for mine, we have to have at least 2 reputable, professionally reviewed sources. It has to be reviewed or professionally reviewed in at least 2, and they have a list of places that I can use for purchasing books. It has material selection criteria. So some of the things are needs of the school and value to the collection, organization and presentation of content, representative of many viewpoints, high artistic quality and or literary style. So we have an entire list. I think probably all districts have a selection policy that you have to go to and look for, especially for things that you think might be considered controversial. I highly doubt that anybody is going to challenge any of my books on dinosaurs or and I'm in a K through 8, a unique situation where I'm buying for kindergartners, so buying for 8th graders who are, and so what I'm going to purchase for 8th graders is not going to be the same as what I would purchase for kindergartners. And my kindergartners don't have access to the materials that I buy for 8th graders. So we have it split off so that are not going to be able to get books that would not necessarily be inappropriate, but they're just not for a kindergartner to read.
Right.
So.
Jamie?
What I would add is what we've seen in the past couple years is attacks on even the professional reviews that we use to justify book purchases. So there were even some officials in the Greenville County School District who directly stated that, like, School Library Journal is a professional journal for school librarians, as the name suggests, and it's peer edited professional journal. And often we all use that magazine, that periodical, to read the book reviews. Well, they came out and attacked it and said, School Library Journal doesn't share the same values as the school district. And so that, that's been tough to deal with too, when you have people, censors, who are willing to attack some of the very foundations of our profession. And that's just a censorship tactic to then just attack everything that we, use in our ethic, the foundations of the ethics of our profession. So that's been really tough as well.
I think it would be helpful also to make clear, like, the books that you're ordering, these aren't books that were, like, you're saying, like, these students must read these. What is the difference between, say, the books that are chosen for, say, the general English 1 at a ninth grade curriculum, the books that are generally assigned for all students to read, and certainly they don't have to read them. There's ways that parents can opt out. But what's the difference between that and what you're ordering for the library?
So all of us, before we're in a classroom, before we went in the library. So I think we can all say, when I'm choosing a book that I'm going to read aloud, or if I'm going to use as part of an assignment, first of all, I've read every page in it. And so I can definitely speak to the entire book. But probably my standard is a little higher, because if it's something I'm going to use for an assignment, then I want, like, the best book ever. But in the library, we want a wide variety. So we have a wide range of reading levels and interests and how it's written, and, popular authors and debut authors. We just have, like, a mix of everything. So to me, like, the class assignment ones, you're trying to pick the best. You're going to be a little pickier than if we're, ordering just for the library collection to add to our collections. We have tens of thousands of books in our library. So, we have a wide variety.
Anybody else want to take that question?
Well, it's more a purpose for, like, everyday recreational reading. So you're not going to come in the school library and pick a book that you're going to write an essay on and take a quiz about, and, all that kind of stuff you do in English class. So that's why, we say we need a wide range of genres and reading levels and formats and topics and all kinds of stuff. And you really only can do that well if you have gotten to know your students and your faculty, which, as Tamara and Michelle already said, takes a lot of time. And that's why it's also frustrating for censors to just talk about us like, well, sometimes they just act like books just magically appear in the library and they don't know how they get in there. There are librarians, these people in society. Either that, or we're just all out to get everybody and be just awful, the most awful, terrible people who want to hurt children on purpose. So
most of us are also parents. Most of us also have kids often in our school building with us at some point. Same. We work in the communities we grew up in. A lot of us are from here. We have a wide range of political opinions, and I guess it doesn't fit their narrative. It's easier for them just to clump us all together and say something. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that I get frustrated by is it's really easy, whether it's a book or a movie or any piece of art, to pull out very specific sections and then to indict the entire piece based upon the parts you're pulling out. Yeah. So, like, there are parts, I've used this as an example, parts of the Bible, if you pull them out and you want to judge the entire Bible on certain aspects of it, whether it's, infanticide or whatever you want to pull out, and then you want to indict the entire book. That's certainly not fair, and I think most people can see that. I think what we're seeing is in a lot of these cases, folks pulling out segments of the book and then saying, well, this whole thing's pornographic as a result of this one particular page or these couple of pieces that we're pulling out. And then when that's all people know about a book, whether it's genderqueer, whatever book we want to bring up, then it's like that's the perception I think people in the public have, is that must be the whole book must be like that. Can you talk about how that's sort of a pernicious way to sort of attack the freedoms that we should have in our public libraries and in our school libraries, to have some books that maybe have pieces or parts that are a little bit controversial, but as a whole, the thing is a worthy work of art that ought to be available to students of the right age to check out if they want to. Can you talk about that?
Well, one thing that I have noticed is a lot of the uproar that you may see, or viral videos or whatever, is usually based on misinformation. So, right. For example, I was at a local festival this fall, and there was a group that had a tent, and they had all these books on display, and they said that our local library had these and it was trash and da-da-da. And I got on my phone and I looked up, and there was only one of them even in the library, and it was already shelved in the adult collection. So
right.
Often some of the things they're hearing are not even true. Or it may be a book that was at the high school but was never at the middle or elementary school or something like that. So before anyone, this is why they write clickbait and things like that the way they do, is to get that emotional reaction. Before you react or, stomp up to the school, like, make sure what you're reading is even accurate. We have online catalogs. We're happy to look up and let people know where a book is, if we even have it. Genderqueer gets brought up all the time, and it was a 1-digit number. I know that as to any school in the whole state that had it. Right. It was a very, very small number. So, just like my suggestion would be, before you react, just make sure the information that you're seeing or reading or hearing about is even true. And then, you can go from there. But
yeah, we live in a culture where outrage is like the currency, like if we can create outrage in a post, then that's what goes viral. So people posting stuff that's misinformation that seems like, this is awful. How are we allowing this? And like, it's either partly true or not true at all.
Yeah.
That manufactures this outrage, and then it gets shared and spread. And I just feel like that's such a disservice and really misinforms the public, who seems to be getting more and more of their ideas of what is happening in our schools through their social networks. Michelle and Jamie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was going to say,
so essentially what happens, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm trying to get this cat out of the way. Go ahead.
Essentially what happens is it becomes a soundbite. Just like we're getting ready to gear up into political ads. So no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, it becomes a soundbite, and you have to dig deeper into the information to determine is accurate and true for where I'm at, or where I think this might be going on at, or I really think that is the biggest thing. And just like touching on what Tamara said, is that a lot of times there is this outrage that doesn't even exist where people may be outraged. So
I was going to share, in the past year, I was essentially attacked by 4 people in the public. And They really was like one report. He's not a reporter. He's like a blogger, just some guy. And then a talk show radio host on 106.3 The Word. And then State Senator Josh Kimbrell, State Rep Stephen Long, all ganged up. And they were sharing the same disinformation about me. So it got to the point where they were saying that I was putting genderqueer in elementary school libraries, which makes absolutely no sense. Mm. And they were also claiming that I forced students to, like, on a Zoom call with Maya Kobabe, the author of Genderqueer. So that's where I don't know how it snowballed into that. I don't know how that came about, but they just can say whatever they want, apparently, and then everyone just believes it. Because there were people who called my school to ask about that. And that totally blindsided me because, I mean, I've never, in my whole entire 18-year career, I've never worked in anything but a high school. So I don't know why anyone would just believe that any one of us could walk into an elementary school and put books in the collection. But I mean, there's people you can call and ask questions if you're not sure about that. So that's really tough when you're going to use social media and to spread these false claims. And it, like you said, it spreads like wildfire. And people just believe it. And they're taking, so I think part of it is doing your homework. So when they share those 1 or 2 pages out of Genderqueer that out of context look controversial for someone underage, where you can have examples from the book that show the positive messages that the book conveys for people who might be interested in reading it. That is helpful to, I mean, they may not listen to you, of course, but some people might. And it just shows that, you know what you're talking about and you've read the book and you address you say, I understand that you would be concerned if a child is seeing something pornographic, but there is no pornography in our library. This is actually the message of the book. Right. Even though it's difficult sometimes to validate what they're concerned about because it's so completely absurd. It does help, I think.
Yeah. Looking at the topic, the title of tonight's conversation is about how to respond to intimidation tactics, and I'd like to make sure we cover that. First of all, I just want to invite anybody who's watching to join the SCEA. I think there's power in being together, power in the collective, power in having partners, and we have our legal team and our help desk that people can call. They can have their UniServe director come and do doorstep service at their school. And right now, shameless plug, you can join the SCEA right now with no dues till September. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, that's how you can do it. Go to jointhescea.org or text the word join to 48744. But I'd like to give each of you an opportunity to talk about some of the specific intimidation tactics that you or maybe a colleague has endured and how you responded to those intimidation tactics so that other school librarians or educators who have, classroom libraries have a feel for how they can stand up for freedom, stand up against censorship attacks.
2 things that I wanted to make sure I brought up this evening. One is the frequency of students either choosing or being told to video their teachers at school, and whether obviously or in secret. That is something that we should all be aware of. So anytime you feel like a student is trying to maybe bait you into an argument, to me, that is one of the things that pops up right away. I'm like, why are they doing this? And I'm not, I don't argue with children. So, any attempts to video me into saying something inappropriate or rude or what is not going to work, because I've been teaching for 18 years. I have 2 kids. Right. I'm a very calm person. So, that's probably not going to work. But, teachers are human. We have our emotions. You just be aware of that. I think legally, from what I've been able to read, They don't have to have your permission to record you. And even if they did, they're probably not going to ask. And once it's shared no matter whether it was legal or not, So just kind of be aware of that, and that there are groups who are trying to target teachers who are encouraging kids to do that. So if you know that you're going to talk about a lesson that maybe become, some sort of debate or something, just be ready. Set that tone in your classroom before you tackle any kind of topic that might be touchy for people. And if you get to the point where you feel like they may be trying to bait you, it's better just to walk away, because it's not going to help you. And then the second thing was my advice about using school devices and school email, because those things are covered under the Freedom of Information Act. And we have had people who are trying to remove books from schools, use FOIA requests to try to intimidate the librarians and the staff members of those schools, especially when the book is not removed, because then they're upset that their attempt to censor books did not work. And so they're going to just escalate and try to target individual people. So just be very careful what you write down, and how you use your school email and computer to communicate. If you feel like it's something that, you would like to talk to somebody more privately about, then I suggest using your personal email and your personal devices, phone, computer, etc.
And Tamara, correct me if I'm wrong, but they can even search your deleted emails. Is that correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So people, a lot of times I think educators think, well, if I delete that, then I'm okay. But there's going to be a record of that email somewhere. So it's really important that, I think your point is spot on, that anybody working in a school building who's using their school email address, whether you're an administrator or a librarian, classroom teacher, whatever, really, really be careful about how you're using that, and making sure that you're using your personal email address for any kind of correspondence that could potentially be controversial or, come back to bite you. For sure. Yeah. Michelle and Jamie?
Well, you really want to make sure that you've built up your relationships with your administrators and your students and your school community, because I know that's probably what really helped me this past year, is people they know me, and they know what kind of person I am. They know what kind of educator I am, and they don't believe any of the crazy accusations that have come my way. It's always a great idea to maybe you don't want to bring it up to your principal, but you want to make sure, hey, if you get any calls, I'm glad to take them for you. Just forward them to me. I'll talk to the parents. Or a reminder, hey, we do already have a policy. Here's a copy of it in case you misplaced it or whatever. And have your support system. So, I can't tell you, I really can't, how helpful Tamara and Michelle and a lot of other SCASL people have been to me the past year. And I also have people at school I know I can talk to who maybe aren't as deep into this issue as I am. So they are good sounding boards for me in case I think I've gone off the rails about something. And I want us to be confident. We're not doing anything wrong. I can justify every single thing I do in my classroom, in my school library. And so I can confidently tell people, hey, if you have a question, come in my classroom, come in the library, let's talk, see what I have. And when you're not doing anything wrong, there's nothing to be afraid of.
Right. But if you're following procedures, you're following policy. I think it's important. A couple of you have mentioned this sort of self-censorship based on fear or wanting to avoid controversy, wanting to avoid challenges. And I think it's really going to be important. And I say this, and I know how hard it is in that kind of atmosphere to stand up for yourself. I don't want to make it like it's easy, but I do think it's important for us. There's this extremist element that is been inserted into the public school arena here that I think needs to be stood up against, because I think we are on a slippery slope and a very dangerous pathway if we acquiesce to extremist forms of censorship, and because now it's going to be these specific books, but then they're successful and they're going to go after other books and other books and other books, to the point where our books and libraries are stripped of the diversity that they need to serve our students well. Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Can I just add real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Just real quick. I'm sorry, Michelle.
Yeah.
That our students are watching us. I have had several students over the past couple of years say comments to me like, I can see the diversity in this library. I can find books with characters like me. And that's why we do what we do, is to reach every single student, not just the students who have parents who have censored the whole collection.
Thank you.
I'll just add that I do think it's very important that we're talking about librarians, but just educators in general. I think it's important that you are part of national organizations, so that if you do need someone to turn to, you have somebody can help you in situations like that, because sometimes you are, and while we are all school librarians, we usually are the only people in our building who may be going through this. So it's important that I think join the professional organization CEWL. Now, we can't provide any legal, provide just support and kind of getting other school librarians in contact with librarians who have been through the same thing, whether it's at the state level or in other states. So I do think that it's important to get involved with your professional organizations, no matter whether it's SCEA. I know that everybody does, not school librarians, but school librarians for CEWL, because those are the people who are going to the same things that you are, that you can reach out to. And it's important to have that network of people to be able to reach out to, that you can trust, because sometimes people in your building do not feel the same way that you do and are not in support of whatever it may be, whether, and I know we're talking about censorship here, but, we've been kind of monitoring the House 37. So, and that can be just teaching history. They're saying it doesn't have anything to do with this, but I mean, eventually that's still school materials. So I think it's important to make connections with people that in like-minded with you. But then also looking at intimidation tactics, there was something that I had watched recently, and
Frozen.
When people are in positions of authority or power and they are being disrespectful to you, then really that's not just disrespect, that's also bullying. And so they are using their positions of power and authority to make you feel inferior and intimidated. And you have to realize that, yes, they are in these positions, but that doesn't necessarily make them have that authority to make you feel that way. And it's important to recognize that, all right, these are people who, that is the path that they chose, whether it's legislators, whatever, school board members, superintendents, principals, whatever it is, those are people, those paths. That just might not be the path that I wanted to take. So that doesn't make them any different from me and be my boss, or can make, or going to affect me. That doesn't give them the right to intimidate and bully me. So
Thanks for that. I posted in the comments, anybody who's watching who's interested in learning more about the South Carolina Association of School Librarians, the website's CEWL.net, and you guys have a Facebook group at facebook.com/CEWL. And so folks can connect either place. And I certainly encourage all school librarians to do that. And also to consider, joining the SCEA, because that is where we come in with the legal representation, legal resources in terms of you can call our help desk and speak with our attorneys and get the kind of advice that you need if you have a specific question that comes up and you're not sure what to do and you're kind of scared. If you're a member of the SCEA, you can call us and we can help point you towards the right answers and the right and help you understand your rights as an educator, as a librarian. I
just want to say highly recommend that, because anytime we've been helping people across the state this last year or so, that's one of the first things that we ask them: are you already a member? Because it does give you that peace of mind to know that there's a group there behind you ready to help you.
Thanks. And we are strongly advocating against this censorship legislation. And sometimes I think people can read the legislation that's proposed and maybe feel like, well, what's so wrong with this? And a lot of it has to do with how that legislation is then interpreted. We see what's happened in Florida, where we have educators who are just going through and just removing all the books from their classroom libraries because they're not sure what they're going to get in trouble for, potentially a felony charge for having the wrong book on their shelves. And so it's not always about the legislation that can seem, maybe to some seems innocuous. It's how is that going to be interpreted, and how is that going to be deployed to then pull books out or to create this culture of fear where educators are like, I'm not even sure how to interpret this myself, so I'm going to start removing these books, and then the kids don't have access to the diverse range of books that they need, and then educators feel like they can't talk about certain subjects that should be talked about in a public school setting. Can you guys talk about the legislation? And I know, Tamara, you said you had a small victory today. Can you talk about the legislation and what concerns you about some of the proposed legislation in terms of your school libraries?
Yeah, so on top of dealing with individual attempts to censor books, we're also very closely monitoring bills, like you said, that would open the door to make it easier or to make it more confusing for people to know what to purchase, what's allowed. And it also, the 3728 has the additional layer of like surveillance from people who can lodge complaints against teachers. While we already have laws in place that monitor teacher behavior, we're already observed, we already have, where somebody can have their certificate revoked if they do something really horrible. Those things are already in place, and this is just kind of adding on to that fear. And so especially at a time where we don't need to make this profession harder, we need to be recruiting and showing these young people what an amazing job it is and what it can be, and try to get more people who love kids to come to the classroom and come to the schools and come to libraries. So it's just sad to me that we actually have real problems in education that our legislators could help us with, and this is not one of them.
Yeah, I mean, with a record number of vacant classrooms and like you said, just the difficulty in recruiting and retaining high quality educators for our public schools, to me, like, that should be the priority of our state legislature, is how do we address that effectively? And instead it's like, we're going to make the job more stressful, fan the flames of this sort of extremism that we're seeing, and also give credence to false narratives around people calling us indoctrinators and groomers and all of that.
Yeah.
Which is just absolutely insane for anybody who's actually works or has visited a public school and goes around and just talk with educators, talk with librarians, get to know them. I promise you that our schools are not filled with groomers. I promise that we're not.
No.
Michelle, Jamie, what are your thoughts about the legislation and the potential impact that it can have?
Well, I'm pretty cranky about it, especially today. What I think is actually in some weird way kind of fascinating is there's a couple of different strands of logic that are directly at odds with each other in the one bill. So, which may not be unusual, I don't know, but so they have all that parental rights language in there. Only parents have the sole responsibility of the education of their children and XYZ. Well, of course, but then it also says that the Department of Education would be in charge of establishing what is age appropriate for each student and what can be in the school. Well, both of those things aren't necessarily true together, right? So, I don't need the government to tell me what is appropriate for my own child to read. I know that. I'm his mom. And, my kid is interested in a lot of different things than some other kid. And, especially when you're talking about younger students who are able to read ahead for their age, we don't need the government to restrict our students and our children. And I don't even know, typically some of these people are the ones who would be in favor of less government.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to get across here, is that we are a professionally trained person in the building who can help your student work with the parent. We want to work with parents to help their children find appropriate reading materials, but that's different for every single kid. And we don't need the South Carolina State Department of Education determining that, particularly because she ran a very partisan campaign, and we know exactly where she stands on this issue.
Yeah, and it feels to me like a lot of this rhetoric is pitting parents against educators. And like Tamara said, a lot of educators, I mean, I have 3 kids who two are still in our public schools, and it's like most educators aren't looking to be antagonistic towards parents. We actually want parental involvement. We want to cooperate. We want to understand their needs and concerns. We're open to that. We actually want them to come into, open house and parent conferences, and so that we can talk with them and learn more about their situations. This isn't about, I think gets framed as like the educator has a point of view and that we want to indoctrinate kids by providing these books. And it's like, no, that's not what's happening. But it's very frustrating to see folks in government create a dynamic that creates this antagonism between parent and teacher, when it should be a cooperative thing. And because that's what's in the best interest of our kids, is when the parents and the teachers work together. Michelle?
So before becoming a school librarian, I was a high school social studies. So this legislation is, from my former studies teacher self, and I just happen to be tomorrow doing primary source analysis with 7th grade on African imperialism. So we're looking at different images, and we're analyzing photos, and some of them are showing imperialism in a very different light than the other ones are. So when you're looking at history and you're looking at documents and this is outside of even books right now, when you're looking at things from history, there's always different perspectives in that. So I can find Civil War, there are people who support of the Union, and then there are people who are in support of the Confederacy. And so no matter what you are talking about in this, there are going to be different points of view. And so it's hard to know, like, okay, what am I not supposed to hit on, or what am I, you know what I mean? Right. Like, it's kind of this gray area of, oh, well, we don't do that, but, we to do that because we want students to critically think about parts of our history and make those decisions. And I'm just giving you things to analyze. I'm not telling you which way to go either. That's not me influencing any child's decisions or influencing parents and what they want to teach their children or anything like that. I'm just giving you, these are sides to a story. And it just happens to be the history of for tomorrow, it'll be the history of Africa, but another day it might be the history of the United States. So,
right. And I think the thing we have to learn to do in our society is accept the fact that we all have different ideas about politics, philosophy, religion, about what we want our kids, what kind of values we want to convey to our kids, and how we want to raise them, and what we want them exposed to. And we live in a pluralistic society. We live in a society with, very liberal to very conservative people, very religious to very non-religious people, and all those kids are coming to our public schools, and we have to serve and represent every single one of them. And the idea that we're only going to cater to people of specific religious or political values, or that we're going to censor out some of the stuff that certain people don't like or that certain people find offensive, is really anathema to living in a democracy and teaching kids about freedom, and teaching kids, the basic Bill of Rights, freedom of expression, freedom to read, different types of materials, and freedom of parents to raise their kids with the values that they feel are important. So we can give parents that freedom, but also provide the freedom to our students and other parents to give them the resources that they need to feel like they have access to diverse materials and materials that represent them. And that's really, to me, what this conversation is all about, is about freedom and maintaining as free a society as we possibly can. And where we see attacks on that freedom, educators must step up. And I just want to say thank you to each one of you, to Tamara, Michelle, Jamie, for taking that stance. I know it's not easy, and I know you've probably had to deal with some intimidation, but thank you so much for standing up and representing ultimately our students and their rights and their needs, and that's what we should all be focused on, is what do our kids need. So I want to thank my guests tonight. Any final thoughts before we sign off? Did we miss anything?
Just keep using your library.
All right. Yes. Thank you so much to all three of you. I appreciate your time and everything that you do to support public education in South Carolina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. That was Tamara Cox, Jamie Gregory, and Michelle Spires. I want to remind you that if you are a school librarian and you're not currently involved, please go to scazzle.net. You can also find them on Facebook at facebook.com/scazzle. We would love to connect with you at the SCEA. If you're not currently a member, you're just interested in learning more about the South Carolina Education Association, the only teachers union in South Carolina, an affiliate of the largest labor union in the United States, the NEA. You can go to the scea.org/connect. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you can join now. If you work in a public school in South Carolina, you can join right now. Just go to jointhescea.org, or you can text the word join to 48744, and you won't pay any dues for April, May, June, July, or August. You won't pay any dues until September. That's amazing. You can have access to all the benefits, the cruise benefits, the travel benefits, the micro credentials. You can have access to almost all of the benefits through that time period. There's a few that you don't have access to until September, but now's the time to join and become a part of our movement. It's not about just joining an association and expecting the association to do all the work for you. No, we are a network. We are a movement. We want to bring people together to build collective power at the school site, district-wide, county-wide, statewide, nationally. And we feel like it takes being active and organized at your local level, at your state level, and the national level for us to move public education forward in the right way. We can't just be involved in one level. We've got to be involved in all three levels. I want to thank again the folks who tuned in tonight: Valerie, Johnny, Mike Leroy, Todd, Jake, our awesome executive director. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to continue commenting on social media. We will post this to the CEWL website within the next few days, at cool.us. So just head on over to CEWL.us and you'll be able to find tonight's live stream if you're just starting to tune in. If you tune in late and you want to see the whole thing, it'll be there within the next couple of days. We'll have it posted there. Again, remind you to speak out against these censorship bills at the scea.org /pro-truth and against voucher schemes at the scea.org/S39. Monday, I will have Josh Malkin of the ACLU on to speak about censorship and the freedom to read, similar type issues. Really excited to have that conversation with Josh Malkin from the ACLU on Monday, April 17th from 7 to 8 o'clock. Also, we have some exciting news coming up about a potential retreat in North Carolina. It'll be taking place in Black Mountain, North Carolina, June 14th through the 16th. It'll be a mindfulness retreat specifically for public school employees in South Carolina. If you're interested, you can find more information that will be coming forth on the CEWL website and through our social media channels. Thanks so much again to Tamara, Michelle, and Jamie for their time tonight. And thank you for tuning in and for all that you do for our public schools in South Carolina. We'll see you Monday, 7 o'clock.